Hello friends, good to see you again through this video. Today I wanted to talk about a very important practical question that we all face in our life. This is the question: whether husband's family is important or wife's family is important. See, when two people come into marriage, when a man and a woman they get into marriage, so it is not only that those two people are being united, but behind them there are two families, right? So those two families are also getting united. So which means each family may have its own custom, they may have their own practices, they may have their own way of doing things. But when it comes to the union of marriage, when it comes to a wedding where a man is joined to a woman in the presence of God, so it is very important the two families also has to get along, and the way the man and the woman treats each other's family is very, very important. Because today if you see in the society, most of the issues that happens between the couple, right, like especially between the husband and wife, is primarily because the way the husband is not treating the wife's family right, or wife is not treating the husband's family right. That is one of the primary reason you can see. And that is why we need to understand this one verse that says, Genesis chapter 2 verse 24, when God made Adam and Eve and he formed that marriage, right? This is what it says: therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. See, when a man and a woman become one flesh, what it represents, so which means the son's family, they should see the son's bride or the daughter-in-law as their son itself. The same way, the daughter's family should see their son-in-law as their daughter. That is what this one flesh is all about. For example, if I and my wife, if we see both of us as one flesh, which means the same way, I as a son, how I belong to my family, the same way my wife also belongs to my family. Same way I belong to my wife's family. So that is where, when we don't have that perception, when we have this like a false balance, or when we have like a double standard, like when it comes to my family, this is how I want to treat them, but when it comes to my wife family, I don't want to treat them in the same way. When I think like that, what happens? I am having a false balance, right? I am not having the same standard or the same measure that I follow for my family, but for my wife's family, I follow a different standard. But what God's word says, if you read in Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1, this is what the Lord's word says: a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. See, when you and I, whether we are a husband or a wife in our family, if we have this false balance towards the families, especially towards our spouse family, it becomes an abomination to the Lord. Because we are supposed to treat, when my wife is the flesh of me, I am supposed to treat her family as the same way how I treat my family, right? That is very clear. So today I wanted to post 4 questions. I want to discuss this topic using 4 important questions, so that it will help us to understand where are we going in our life, where are we in our married life. So today we may be like 10 years into our marriage, 20 years into our marriage, or 30, 40 years it may be. But still, if we are not able to have the right balance between these two families, or still we are not able to have the same level of measure among these two families, what will happen? We are still not in a single flesh. As a husband and wife, we have still not yet come to that point where we think we both are one. So this is the first question, my dear friends. How do you respect your in-laws? How do you respect the parents of your spouse? That is the first question to think. Because it is easy for me to love my parents, because I've been born to them and I have been raised with them, and I know very much, I know about them a lot. So it is very easy for me to understand them also, and it is very easy for me to love them. It comes naturally. But when it comes to my in-laws, it is a process I need to go through, because it is not going to happen right on the day one after I get married. I can start to call them as my dad and mom, but still underneath my heart, if I am able to show the same love that I am showing upon my parents, or the same way I respect my parents, or the same way how I heed to their voice, how I heed to their instructions, is it the same way I deal with my in-laws, is the question. So until I reach that point, it is a journey for me. I have to go through that process, and it is an ongoing process, but one day definitely I have to come to a point where I can say, yes, I love my in-laws as I love my parents. So if I am able to say that out of my heart and truly, God, because God knows my intentions and motives, right? So when I know that in the presence of God, I can testify, yes, I treat my in-laws the same way as I treat my parents, that is when I realize that I have become as a one flesh with my wife. That is the point where we can say, yes, I am a single flesh with my wife. Me and my wife are as single flesh. That is when we can say that. The second question that we need to think is, how do we talk about our spouse family to others? When we talk about our dad or mom or sisters, brothers, or somebody from our family, and when we talk about them with others, we always try to make sure that they are shown in a dignified light, right? They are put in such a way that they are all dignified people and they have their respect. But when it comes to talking about our spouse family, are we really following that? Or how many times we would have belittled our spouse family members to make them look bad, or to make our family look better than them? So when we think about these kind of questions, that is when we will realize that we are still not acting as a single flesh with our wife. And that is why, when I consider my wife as my own flesh, I cannot belittle her family, right? I cannot belittle her family members because they belong to me. I belong to them. So that is the second important thing that we need to understand. How do we talk about our spouse family with others, right? When we talk about them to the outside world. So how do we portray them? How do we talk to them about our spouse family? That is the second important thing we need to understand. We need to think about it. Then third important question is, how do we help our families? Whether how do we help my family, or how do I help my spouse family? Because many times we see, if there is something happening in my family, or my sister or my brother, they are in a dire need, it is very easy for me to take my money and give it to them, or some sort of help. But when it comes from my wife's family, or when my spouse family is facing the same issue, many times we don't have that willingness, right? Many times we are finding it hard to do the same way, to do the same help that we are able to easily do to our own family. See, that is again that indifference. That is again an unbalanced scale and unbalanced, favor. So when you have to help it, you have to follow the same standard. You have to follow the same measure. The same way you treat your husband's family, you have to treat your wife's family also in the same way. That is what the Lord expects us. Then the fourth important thing, how do you share information with both the families? That is the fourth important thing we need to think. Because when it comes to sharing some information about my family, which is like myself, my wife and my kids, right? So I come from my family and my wife comes from her family, which means they are our extended family. And still, if we decide that we are not going to share this information to your family, but only my family should know about this, it is not needed for your family to know about this. See, this is again an unbalanced way of handling these two families. Because if I am interested in to show, or if I am interested to share some of the things about what is going in my life with my dad and mom, I am also bound to share the same with my wife's family, my wife's parents, because they are also interested to know what is going in our family, because their daughter is part of my family, and I and her and their daughter, we are considered as one flesh, which means they are like my dad and mom, and they also should know what is going in our life. So that is why, my dear friends, when we think about these kind of questions in our life today, many times we'll know the truth that we are trying to be favorable to one particular family, but on the other side we are not being favorable, or we are not doing justice to the other family. Sometimes we go in an unbalanced scale. So everybody goes through it. Like as I said, right, this is not going to happen right after the day one of your marriage. It is a long journey. It is a process. But the important thing is, Are we learning in the process? Are we learning in the journey? That is the most important thing. Because if you don't learn, it doesn't make any sense. Even if you have completed your 40th anniversary, and if you still say, no, my wife's family is different, my family is different, we don't do this, that, I am not able to accept my wife's family as my own family because I have a lot of differences with them, then which means it is not you have differences with your wife's family, but you are accepting the fact that you and your wife are not still one single flesh. Because that is what the Lord said, right? If a man and a woman, they get married, and if they become one single flesh, if they cleave together as one single flesh, which means they have to treat each other's family on the same way, like how they will treat their own families. So today, let me remind you these two important verses, because Jesus said, love your neighbors as yourself. So who are our neighbors? So immediately when we hear this word neighbors, we think about people who live outside of our home. But first, let us think about our inner circle, the family. Myself, my sister, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law. So these are the people who God has given in my life to show the true love to them. If I am not able to show that true love within my family, then how can I really express the true love outside of this circle and try to be a witness for God, right? That is why the Bible is very, very clear. If you read in 1 John chapter 4, verse 20 and 21, it says like this: if anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. The Bible is very blunt. It talks to you on face. It says, you say you love God, but you are not able to love your brother-in-law or your sister-in-law or your father-in-law or your mother-in-law. If you are not able to love the family members of your spouse, then there is no point in you saying that you love God. Because he says, for he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have received from God. That's why we have to love the people who God has given in our life, right? So whoever loves God must also love his brother. So today, my dear friends, if you are going through this kind of question, whether husband's family is important or wife's family is important, the answer is very simple. Both the family are important. You cannot have unbalanced scales. You have to deal both of them in the same way. That is the plain answer. But if you are struggling in this, if you are struggling over this area, you can ask the help of God, because the only way we can do this is when the love of God fills our heart. That is when we will be able to sort out the differences, overlook the differences, and still love both the families in the same way. So I pray that the Lord will give you that strength, and He will help you to come to that point where you will feel that you and your wife are one single flesh, and that you are able to honor both the families in the same way. May the Lord bless you all. You all have a blessed and happy day. God bless you.